Okay, can everyone see my screen?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, perfect. I'll go ahead and get started. Let's see. Good afternoon. My name is Shannon Banks, and my dissertation is entitled The Practice of Counseling and Its Contribution to the Success of African American Male Counselors. I became interested in this topic after taking part in several discussions with African American males regarding their career selection process. Several males indicated they experienced despondency after graduating high school. They were expected to go to college, the military, or obtain a job, but were unsure which of these paths best suit their career, vocational, and personal abilities. I personally experienced a similar feeling after graduating high school. And although many years later, I found a counselor with the same ethnicity and gender who could relate to my experiences. She became my first line of defense to improve my self-efficacy and positively contributed to my decision-making regarding my career trajectory. Research suggests that changing one's thought process about the best use of their talents, skills, and abilities in relation to their career success begins with self. However, this begins with an internal recognition and action seeking emotional support and altering undesirable cognitive scenarios. Therefore, I became interested in how counseling can support this population in selecting their career trajectory. In 2017, the US Department of Health and Human Services published the Sex, Race, and Ethnicity Diversity of Health Occupations Report, which details the amount of healthcare workers in the US. Its purpose was to attract more diverse and skilled healthcare workers and to create more equitable and innovative programs. When examining the statistics holistically, the statistics reflected that men made up 53% of the overall healthcare occupations. However, in social science/services career fields, the report reflected a need for more men and African Americans in the healthcare occupations, such as counselors, psychologists, and social workers. According to Bortnega 2016, by 2043, the United States will become a majority minority nation, but minorities are projected to make up only 9% of school psychologists. Researchers have speculated that men have not entered these career fields because of feministic ideologies, monoculturalism, masculinity, and identity issues, and self-efficacy. In terms of African American males, it's suggested that they are not being recruited in these master's and doctoral programs, but are guided toward more technical professions. The purpose of this study was to understand the why African American males decided to enter the field of counseling, how they sustain themselves, and how they perceive their role as African American male counselors in the field of counseling. The study described the experiences of African American male counselors while exploring the history of males in counseling and using the social cognitive career theory, SCCT, as a framework to help articulate the narrative of participants in this study. Researchers have defined the social cognitive career theory, SCCT, as a comprehensive framework used to explain the motivations behind the development and mission of an academic major and career choice. It was created by Linton Brown. Previous studies related to counseling have used it to help participants navigate and make sense of their occupational experiences. SCCT is based on Bandura's social cognitive theory, which suggested that human performance results from individual behavior and environmental influences. For this study, it was used to examine why African American males pursued a career in the field of counseling using narrative-based methodology. This approach was closely examined their thinking, external influences, and the atmospheres in which they developed their career aspirations. For this study, a qualitative phenomenological research methodology is used to uncover this phenomenon's importance. Phenomenology focuses on the human experience. This methodology focuses on the what, why, and how questions. Its principles are closely tied to the field of psychology. And this study used the methodology from Martin Heidegger's hermeneutic philosophy while focused on on the interpretive. The philosophy is centered around an individual's narrative because a phenomenon cannot be interpreted without considering and understanding the human background. The study also used an interpretive phenomenological analysis, IPA, in the interview guide and questions to provide an in-depth view of the counseling phenomenon according to African American male counselors' experiences. The significance of this study is that it can benefit academia, the field of counseling, and African American males. In academia, it can provide schools and counselors with knowledge and tools to support African American males with their potential career aspirations. The findings from this study can provide some insight into the experiences and tools to better prepare them to achieve their idea of career success in educational and counseling spaces. Further, it can provide insight into the importance of understanding and efficient career development techniques to support diverse and cultural backgrounds, understanding how African American males perceive themselves and their clients in counseling spaces to help recruit and sustain them in this field. Finally, understanding African American males on their terms gives them a sense of worth and belonging. Also, when given the opportunity to be in these spaces where they are valued and their skills and abilities are appreciated, this population will use the opportunity to pave the way for future clients and practitioners. The research questions for this study are as follows. What factors influence African American males to pursue a career in the field of counseling? How do African American males perceive their level of importance or significance as a professional in the field of counseling? What is the relationship between African American males' self-efficacy and pursuing a career in the field of counseling? And what is the relationship between African American males in a counseling field, participating or not participating in counseling before pursuing a career in the field of counseling? I will unpack these questions further later in the discussions and finding slides. This study interviewed 13 African American males from various regions across the US who have completed a master's or a doctorate in the field of counseling. These are clinically licensed professionals serving as social workers, mental health counselors, marriage and family therapists, and psychologists, offering a variety of health and wellness services. The themes of this study were community, representation, acknowledgement, and participation. They were cultivated based on the frequency of words and phrases used by actual participants in this study as they revealed their experiences while pursuing and sustaining themselves in the field of counseling. In the next slides, I will reiterate the research questions and further address these concepts in the next slides. The first research question for this study was what factors influence African American males to pursue a career in the field of counseling? The first theme uncovered was community. This theme had 3 sub-themes, which were environmental factors, which depicted the neighborhood circumstances in which participants grew up in. Family, people who supported and encouraged participants on their journey to become a counselor. And faith and spirituality, which is based on participants' beliefs and practices which sustain them during this process. Participants use words like God, spirituality, spiritual calling, faith, when referencing their experiences in the field of counseling. During the interviews, participants were able to connect to their community, to their decision to enter the field of counseling. Participants reflected on their environment or upbringing, family, and spirituality when they identified them as part of their community and a part of their why for entering the field of counseling. Despite not seeing themselves or future careers in their upbringings, participants still pursued counseling. Seeing a need in their community, they decided to replenish or support their skill set. They decided to replenish or supported their community with their skill set, Participants credited family, no matter the kinship, for giving them advice, spoken and unspoken, on their decision to enter the field initially and subsequently sustain themselves in the field of counseling. Throughout the interview processes, participants paid homage to their faith and spirituality and used a variety of words to acknowledge their practice or belief in a higher power. The second question for this study was, how do African American males perceive their level of importance or significance As professionals in the field of counseling, the second theme uncovered was representation. Participants did not use the word representation when speaking about themselves, but they did so when they referenced clients, specifically African American or Black males, in terms of creating a safe space for them in counseling or therapeutic spaces. Participants used words such as safe, relate, comfort, vulnerable, and safe space when they described experiences and scenarios related to the sub-theme of safe space. They even discussed the importance of appearance, not just physically, but in terms of their counseling and therapeutic spaces. By recognizing their clients' needs, it has helped them create comfortable space, even for those outside of their ethnic and racial makeup. Participants identified the need for representation outside of themselves to benefit current and future clients and future practitioners. In this study, the participants wanted to provide a safe space for clients who look like them. Prior research has associated safe spaces for African American males with identifiable staples such as historically Black colleges and universities, HBCUs, and local barbershops. However, little to no research offers strategies to provide a safe space for African American males in therapy environments. Sharing these experiences of African American men in niche career fields like counseling invites more men of color into the field as participants or practitioners. The findings from this study indicated that representation matters because there is healing that needs to be completed for African American males by African American men using a vernacular approach in an environment that represents safety for these men to express themselves freely. The third question for this study was, what is the relationship between African American male self-efficacy and pursuing a career in the field of counseling? The third theme uncovered was acknowledgement. Participants used a variety of words and phrases to articulate their experiences. In some cases, these experiences rerouted their focus, prolonging their struggle to regain their resilience. The participants were honest about experiencing the ebbs and flows of life, which included death, drug abuse, imposter syndrome, and environmental struggles. They showed emotion and took pauses and breaths to regain composure. Some even wiped tears in joy and sorrow. They were not standoffish, did not exhibit behavior to appear as unaffected by life happening, nor did they use masculinity to shy away from topics as indicated in prior research studies. This section is about counselors recognizing their abilities and overcoming obstacles to reach their goals. According to Bandura 1989, self-efficacy is defined as the extent to which individuals believe they can master a particular skill. Participants were being able to self-reflect on how and why they entered the field of counseling, illustrates just how much self-efficacy they had. However, despite their challenges, participants were found to have high levels of self-efficacy, which helped them to overcome experiences as they carried out various occupations and responsibilities in the field of counseling. They applauded themselves for completing many achievements, including becoming licensed social workers, mental health counselors, psychologists, and marriage and family therapists. By sharing their story, they hope to show how believing in themselves can encourage others while combating social narratives that may suggest otherwise. The final research question for this study was, what is the relationship between African American males in the field of counseling, participating or not participating in counseling before pursuing a career in counseling? The fourth theme uncovered was participation. There was no direct relationship between participants of this study going to counseling before pursuing their careers. Participants were able to make a connection in how their participation in internships and other working experiences prepared them for their role as counselors. However, participants indicated that hands-on approaches was where they learned most about the field of counseling. Through internships and guidance from counseling personnel, they were able to determine if the demands of a specific field piqued their interest and aligned with their skill sets. These men have worked, interned, or volunteered in community health clinics, shelters, juvenile detention centers, prisons, and other places for little to no pay to spread hope for all in their community. These spaces have challenged them mentally and emotionally, impacting how they counsel patients and their interaction with other practitioners. The limitations of this study are as follows. Initially, the study focused on career counseling. However, career counseling is not a sole occupation, but a subset of counseling responsibilities. This study did not focus on a specific counseling field due to the limited population of licensed African American males. However, during the interviews, I uncovered some vast differences in career occupations in the mental health field, which impacted how participants experienced the phenomenon of counseling. The role of the researcher. As the researcher in this study, I have not studied concepts related to counseling occupation and only bring a limited view of the higher education occupational requirements for these fields. Further, I do not share the same gender as participants in this study. Therefore, for future studies, it might be beneficial to have an interviewer with an extensive, diverse experience in the field of counseling and or shares the same sex that may offer a more unique perspective into male-related experiences and a niche career field such as counseling. For instrumentation, researchers used Bandura's SCT theory as a foundation to cultivate new, beneficial, and complex theories, and I found that this concept is most beneficial alongside narrative-based methodology. However, readers need a holistic view of participants and their background to understand the how and why they entered the career field. Therefore, the career resilience framework might be more appropriate for future studies when analyzing the relationship between male self-efficacy and the pursuit of a career in the counseling field. Career resilience examines how personal and contextual factors, along with career satisfaction, intentions to change careers, and subjective career success can impact one's career resilience. Recommendations for future research are as follows. The men in this study are products of their environment. However, their untapped stories and the phenomenon diminishes the societal inflicted narrative regarding their population and highlights their accessibility, necessity, sustainability, and longevity in counseling. Previous studies have focused on societal perspective and do not give enough importance to the views of one's inner circle or support system or factors outside of themselves, such as faith and self-efficacy, which sustain them on their career journey. In addition, they reflected on how as counselors, they created space for their African-American males. Researchers have speculated on what these spaces look like. However, the true answer lies in working with these clients. Addressing the issue begins with adapting more narrative-based approaches to counseling practices. Counseling is a multifaceted, it's multifaceted in terms of their higher education programs offered by colleges and universities. Participants in this study hold a variety of degrees in addition to multiple areas of expertise or concentrations and licenses. Counselors work unremittingly on continuing education requirements, their discrete areas of interest, all while staying up to date on education and research in their fields. This needs to be considered and used to unpack how participants experience the phenomenon. This research highlighted 13 men who are prominent psychologists, social workers, mental health counselors, and marriage and family therapists, committed to providing a seat for African-American men and young men in counseling spaces. The findings in this study highlight the importance of community, representation, self-efficacy, and participation when entering a field like counseling. These stories support all males considering entering these fields where they are not readily represented as males, as well as considering counseling as clients. As the population of those seeking and entering counseling changes, counselors will need more relatable concepts and theories, and certainly more examples of successful narratives, and that begins with sharing one story. I would like to thank my dissertation committee, Drs. Forrester, Dr. Surgeon, Dr. Snyder for their support during this process. And I also want to thank my community who showed up to support me today in the final stretch of this process.